All right, going to be getting into the March Madness brackets. We're going to go through game theory, checking out the odds, looking at what the public opinion is to go ahead and try to find out where we can make the most logical pivots in our bracket to set us up for the most success while making a March Madness bracket. Also going to be touching on some bets along the way that we can make during the first round or two of March Madness. Let's go ahead and get into it. So just some informational things that you guys should need to know. I'm going to be using 538, their kind of bracket predictor. I'm also going to be looking at DraftKings Sportsbook, trying to figure out kind of the round one odds. And we're also going to be looking at stuff like winner, Sweet 16, stuff like that. We're also going to be using Yahoo Sportsbook to go ahead and make our pick. The nice thing about Yahoo Sportsbook is that they also have odds. I shouldn't say Yahoo Sportsbook, Yahoo Fantasy. They also have odds associated with it as well. So we'll be able to make educated decisions doing that. So as you guys can see, I already went through and made the bracket. I'm going to go through and kind of show you guys my thoughts for this. So for all the number one seeds, I just went ahead and picked those teams to win. Let's go ahead and start with the South region, and we'll start with West Virginia. Now, 56% of the field picked West Virginia to win. That's because they have a minus 140% chance to win. And if we pull that up, we would see this is pretty accurate. 56% of the field is going to be on West Virginia. We look at their odds to win this matchup, it's about 56%. They're also one of the only 8-9 matchups in which they are favored to win by 2.5 points instead of 1. We look at 538's odds, though we could see this could potentially be a spot in which maybe we go with Maryland. Although this is going to be a moot point, I'm perfectly fine just taking the chalk here and going with the team that's favored to win. Although, like I said, 538, they have a slightly different opinion. From there, we have probably my favorite 5-12 matchup here between Charleston and SDSU. As you guys can see, I did end up going with SDSU, but this is going to be a fun game. This is a game in which if you want to pick Charleston to win, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Charleston is such a fun team. They only lost 3 games on the year. We look at their opponent points given up per game, 67, and we look at their points per game, 80. That is a really good margin there as well. They're a team that goes 9 deep as well, so it's not like we're going to be looking for one star to really take over the game. It's going to be the collection of the whole squad going off. So it's really, can they keep it close and how long can they keep it close? Now, I feel bad for Charleston because they probably got the best 5 seed opponent going against SDSU. This is a pick in which a lot of people, and if we look at it, like a pretty strong likelihood to advance to play Alabama to make it to Elite 8. It's a pretty good margin. If we just look at Virginia, we'll see they have about a 1% chance, more likelihood to make it to the Sweet 16. We can see, though, round one matchup, SDSU compared to Virginia, who obviously is the next matchup, about a 5% difference. So although I think SDSU is definitely the pick that we want to go with, it wouldn't be shocking to see Charleston win, okay? If we were talking about upset picks, this would be one of the ones I would like, plus 180. And so if you look at it, the odds are suggesting that SDSU has about a 66% chance to win. That is what the public is doing as well. So very good stuff there. And then that's going to be true across the ESPN brackets as well. Now we look at Virginia and Furman. Virginia is heavily favored to win. We already saw the odds. They were one of the highest likely teams to win the round one matchup. And what's pretty strange is actually at 72%, they're the worst of the 4 seeds. So it's kind of interesting in that sense. I think just given the bracket, we're probably just going to be picking Alabama to advance. Now, they did have a starter get injured not too long ago, about 20 days ago. That is a cause for concern for me. And that's, I think, what's going to hinder them from being able to really go out and make a long run. Now, this is a very interesting matchup, just given the fact that Furman is a pretty good 3-point shooting team and Virginia is really good at stopping 3 points. So this could actually be a situation, and maybe you're betting on Furman to maybe cover in the first half, and then as the game progresses, obviously Virginia will pull away. So then from there, we do see Creighton here. Creighton is a kind of easy plug and play, it seems like, for everyone. Look at these odds, 225 minus 225. Those are pretty good odds. Once again, that's about a 66% chance for them to advance. We go here. One of the best likelihoods for this, it is the best likelihood for the 6th seed to advance. This is kind of a no-brainer. We kind of just need to use them to advance. So they're kind of the easy pick there. Then from there, Baylor is like everyone's favorite pick, it seems like. 93% for them to advance. And then we look at this as well, minus 600. I mean, that is crazy. Like, this would be one of the all-time upsets if USBC were to win. Just looking at these odds, taking out the juice, about an 82% chance for them to advance. Let's look at the 538 odds. We'll also see that as well, 89%. So these two are pretty easy, okay? Then we continue on. Let's go ahead and get into the 7-10 matchup. And so we can see, looking at Utah State, they got a 64% chance to advance. So let's go ahead and look at the public here. The public is actually going with Missouri here. And we can also see Utah State is slightly favored. To me, this is a big edge spot, and it might not be much, but given the fact that Utah State is favored to win via the money line, and also we can see, looking at it here, they have a higher likelihood to advance. And in terms of 10 seeds, they have the highest likelihood to advance. It's kind of a no-brainer just to go with them. Yeah, sure, it might not matter in the long run, but maybe that 1 point is a difference in a tiemaker. We can see this is a spot in which we are gaining an edge on the field. What I found very interesting is that on ESPN, Utah State's only at 43%. So if you're playing on Yahoo, go with Utah State. If you're playing on ESPN, it probably won't really matter. No big edges gained there. I know there's other spots where people play CBS and whatnot. Maybe just worth looking into. And then from there, we're just going to Arizona. That's an easy pick. So then let's look at it. We're pretty much just going to Alabama, guys. Let's look at the percent likelihood for Alabama to advance. They have basically a 65% chance to make it to the Elite Eight. That is pretty crazy. And they do have the easiest route to get there. So 82% chance for them to move on from West Virginia. We saw that this game is basically a push. It just makes sense. Okay. So we're going with Alabama there. Then from there, we got SDSU versus Virginia. To me, this was extremely interesting. So on paper, like these two teams are very similar. AP rank 18 for SDSU, Virginia 14. Basically the same. Overall record, SDSU has a slightly better record. Once again, Virginia did lose a starter. I think that could really honestly be the difference maker here. In a game that seems like it should be a push, we are gaining a good edge. And we see that on ESPN as well. It's not favored as much as Yahoo, but people are favoring Virginia. Maybe there's name value there. And so if we look here, this might not be much, but San Diego State slightly favored over Virginia, plus 35, plus 45. So we can see why, in theory, going with SDSU should be a big edge that we're gaining. And if they make it there, we're gaining more points than about 70 or, on ESPN, about 54% of the field. To me, that's a very logical approach. And then from there, a very similar situation would be going Creighton over Baylor, because on paper, these two teams should be a push. Let's go ahead and just look at these two matchups once again. Here we can see SDSU versus Virginia. SDSU actually has a slightly better likelihood to advance. We look at Creighton versus Baylor, basically a push, but Creighton has a slightly higher likelihood to advance as well, 1%. And so this should basically be a push, but everyone is going with Baylor. And then we'll see that as well here. 58% of people on ESPN are going with Baylor. Let's look at the chances for these two teams to advance. We see Creighton plus 125. We see Baylor plus 120. So yes, we are seeing that should be more or less 50-50. Let's go with Creighton, where we can potentially gain a big edge there. And all in all, we're probably going to pick Arizona or Alabama to advance. So if this is the wrong decision, it's not going to matter too much. Like, it's not like we're worried about Baylor really beating Arizona. We're not worried about Creighton beating Arizona. That's not a big sweat. Now, yes, if it was maybe Texas or a different 2 seed, maybe. And if you want to compare maybe the two teams, you could do that. Both teams face off against Texas. Creighton lost by 5. Baylor won 1 and lost 1. That seems like a split to me. Baylor lost by 26 to Marquette. Creighton lost twice, so basically a push there. We can see on paper this should be much more of a 50-50 choice. So let's go with the team that people are rostering a little bit less. Then from there, we already know we're going Arizona State. So then we're moving on. We're looking at Alabama over SDSU. It's kind of just a simple choice. Once again, a high likelihood to not only make it to the championship, but even to win. Okay. So it's just, we kind of have to eat the chalk. We're going with Alabama. We don't really see any teams that could really hinder that. So the biggest decision would be Creighton or Arizona. I already mentioned that we're most likely just going with Arizona. Arizona, 15% chance to get to the Final Four, 35% chance to get to the Elite Eight. And I am doing 2 brackets. My one on Yahoo is going to be my more strategic bracket. My one on ESPN is going to be my more fun bracket. Look at this. These two teams on paper are very similar as well. In my fun bracket, if you will, I'm going to go with Creighton because it should be much more of a push. The only thing that would hinder Creighton is if they get into foul trouble. And one interesting thing about the NCAA tournament that no one ever talks about is like the different reffing crews that come in from a different conference. It's one of those things that we have no idea of prior to the games, prior to the tournaments, but they could play a big role. You get a Big Ten team going against a team that has a high pace conference. The refs just naturally, even though they're not supposed to, it's reffed a little bit differently. So it's one of those unpredictable things. But to me, this is pretty interesting. So Creighton does have about a 26% chance to advance to the Elite Eight, whereas Arizona has 35. And if we look at it, besides Marquette, they are the lowest likelihood team to advance to the Elite Eight. Kind of an interesting data point there. And so if we look at it, a lot of teams are picking Arizona. 50% are picking them to advance from the Sweet 16. So yeah, if you're making two brackets, it makes sense to go with Creighton in one of them. And then from there, we are just simply going with Alabama over Arizona. Just once again, they have the highest likelihood to advance. It's as simple as that. So now let's move on into the Midwest. Looking at, we do have Houston. We're just going to go with them. They're their number one seed. And then from there, looking at Auburn versus Iowa. So Auburn is favored to win, but 52% of brackets are going to be on Iowa. That's pretty crazy to me. Now it is tight, but to me, once again, we're trying to maybe gain some slight leverage on the field here. And once again, it seems like people are a little bit more sharp on ESPN. ESPN has it set at 47. Now let's go ahead and look at the difference here. Auburn favored by 58%. So a pretty good number there. Now looking at this game on DraftKings Sportsbook, they have it set as much more of a push, which to me, like depending on where you're playing, I would just say go with the lower rostered team. Maybe try to gain an edge there. Then from there, we have Miami versus Drake. This to me is a very close game, and we can see that by the spread. Look at it, 2.5 points. Pretty crazy there. And so just given that, this kind of seems like a game in which, just given how close of a game it is, maybe we don't want to pick this team to advance to the Sweet 16 because we don't really know exactly which team is going to advance. Now, looking at it, 538 is going to give Miami about a 59% chance to advance, which isn't great. Obviously, Drake, they're going to be another popular upset pick. I would say Charleston and Drake are the two probably most popular upset picks because they do make sense. And like, let's look at this, guys. This is basically an even push. So once again, like looking at this data here, like the odds, I know Miami's favored minus 130, but it could be a spot in which you try to gain an edge on the field. Because I don't want to pick Miami to advance further than this because I do worry about the first round upset, I'm going to go with the chalk here. And if it doesn't hit, I'm fine because I'm only losing out on them for one round. And so with that, we're probably just going with Arizona or Indiana here. Everyone is picking Indiana minus 190 for odds to win. Those are very strong odds. The game is kind of close though. 4.5 points. That's pretty close. But looking at 74% chance for them to advance out of this. So I think we have to just kind of go with them. Now, don't get me wrong. Kent State is very interesting here. So looking at it and like another one in which maybe on the DraftKings Sportsbook or one of the sportsbooks you are betting for the upset here. Obviously, you don't need to hit all of them to be profitable. You just need to hit some of them. Kent State has 6 losses on the season. Indiana has 11. So they are more mentally susceptible, I think, to giving up a close game. And looking at Kent State, they lost to Houston by 5, Gonzaga by 7, and Charleston by 2. Those were all on away game sites. This is going to be on a neutral site. Maybe that helps to go Kent State's way a little bit. That's just a very interesting data point to me. So to me, this section is really a section in which you could get unique and maybe you have fun with it and go with a upset pick to advance. It seems like a toss-up. But with that being said, we're just picking Houston to advance to the Sweet 16 because they have the highest likelihood to as well. So it's kind of as simple as that. We're just going to pick Houston to advance really to probably too far. So from there, we have Iowa State versus Pittsburgh. And this is kind of crazy to me. I think the low odds that we're getting on Pittsburgh are simply just due to the fact that they had to play in the playing game. And another interesting thing here is that if we look at, 11 seeds, they actually have one more 58% of the time since 2014. So just an interesting data point there. They're not a terrible team, but I think simply because people didn't know who's be playing in it, they were one of the lowest teams selected. And we also are seeing that Iowa State is favored there. So probably just going with Iowa State there, probably just picking the chalk there. And then from there, this is a very interesting line there. Minus 165 for Texas A&M to win. Let's go ahead and check out their odds to win. 60% chance for them to win as well. So it does seem like actually the public opinion could be a little bit too low. And we see that across the board for ESPN as well. So it does make sense just to kind of eat the chalk here because we know we're going to be picking Texas to advance. It's kind of as simple as that. We're just picking the 2 seeds to advance. And like looking at it, Texas has a strong likelihood to advance. So we're just going to go ahead and pick them to advance. I realize I skipped over Xavier here. Xavier is heavily favored to win. They're got one of the highest likelihoods to advance. We're just picking them to advance. It's as simple as that. So from there, we have Iowa State versus Xavier. Just due to the fact that I kind of think that Iowa State could be a little bit susceptible to an upset. I think it's just logical to go with Xavier. Let's look at their likelihood to advance out of that game. 48% chance compared to 34. So yeah, we're just going to eat the chalk there again, go with Xavier. And then from there, we got Xavier versus Texas. And so let's just look at the odds. About a 46% chance for Texas to advance. We look at Xavier, 17%. That seems pretty crazy to me. So I wanted to go ahead and look at the difference in odds, and we can see it's not. Texas plus 140 to advance to the Elite 8. Xavier, double that almost. Actually, more than double that. So yes, it does make logical sense just to go with Texas. We're eating the chalk there as well. And that's probably the number one thing. People get too cute with their brackets when really you should be picking a majority of the favorites. You can see the slight edges we've been able to gain. And now because we knew we were going Houston, I still think we are going Houston. To me, they're the best team in the tournament. And actually, if we look at it, they are the odds-on favorite to win. Yet, if we look at ESPN brackets, they are the second most selected team to win behind Alabama. To me, that's pretty crazy. And so already we are getting an edge on the field. And once again, if we just look at these odds, we can see 22% chance for them to win compared to 16 to Alabama. So we are already gaining an edge on a majority of people simply by selecting Houston to win. And if we were to put Houston in the national championship, 61% of people are going with Alabama instead of Houston. So we are gaining an edge there on Yahoo as well. Let's go ahead and move down into the East bracket. Once again, we're just going with the number one seed to win. And now we have Florida Atlantic over Memphis. To me, this is a very, very interesting spot. Okay, we got Memphis projected to win. Don't get me wrong there. They're projected to win. Minus 135. 71% of people are picking them to win though, which if we just look at the true odds by taking out the juice, minus 135 plus 115 on the money line, Florida Atlantic would have about a 45% chance to win. So this should be much tighter than it actually is. And let's take a peek here. We do see that Memphis is heavily favored. Okay. Now to me, this is probably not going to be a big difference because we're going with Purdue. But when I look at these two teams on paper, to me, it seems like it should be much closer. Basically the same BPI rank. If FAU is actually a much better defensive team, they only have 3 losses on the season. Now, the only thing that would kind of be a worry for FAU would be maybe a team that can get out and rebound. That's not Memphis. And so it's kind of the fact that people are more overweight on Memphis than they should be. I like the idea of going with FAU a little bit more. And so that could also be an upset pick that you go with. And then from there, we have Duke versus Oral Roberts. To me, this is another one of those fun matchups that we are getting. Yes, Duke is heavily favored to win, but Oral Roberts is a team that's coming in very hot, and just like Duke, okay? These two teams actually run out 2 bigs or 3 bigs total. There's going to be 3 bigs total on the court, maybe at one time, that are over 7 feet. That is crazy. So the advantage that Duke had by having 2 7-foot tall players on the field or on the court could be hindered a little bit by the fact that Oral Roberts also has one. And Oral Roberts has a stud on the court, averaging 22.2 points while shooting 37.7% from 3-ball range. To me, this could be a fun little upset pick for people, but I do think we kind of just need to roll with Duke. It just wouldn't be shocking to see them struggle and lose in the first round. And they are a risky pick to advance as well. But looking at it, guys, about an 82% chance for Duke to advance according to 538. I think we just kind of need to roll with that. And then we look at Tennessee. They have about an 87% chance to advance. And so just given the fact that Tennessee is a little bit higher likelihood to advance, we might just be picking them to roll over Duke. And so I did mention Tennessee, heavily favored to win, minus 650. They are heavily favored to advance in this game. I think we kind of just need to roll with that. So then let's examine that matchup real quick between Duke and Tennessee. Okay, we can see 61% of the field are going with Duke, and let's actually check out that on ESPN. So we can see Duke at 23, Tennessee at 17.8. Once again, Tennessee is probably the pick we need to be going with. And now let's look at the odds difference. Tennessee minus 140, Duke plus 160. Tennessee getting picked much less than people. That is a big edge when also they are favored to get to the Sweet 16 heavily, especially over Duke. But because it's kind of a risky path, I do still think we are going with Purdue here. Once again, let's look at the odds here. So Purdue, about a 25% chance to advance to the Final Four, whereas someone like Tennessee, about 12, which isn't terrible, but probably not the best. And if we look at it on here, we'll see Purdue plus 135, Tennessee 215. We kind of just need to eat the chalk there, especially because Tennessee isn't a guarantee to get there either. And so now we advance to the lower portion of that bracket. It does seem like we kind of just need to take the chalk on Kentucky here. Providence, not a bad team, but it does make sense to just roll with them. Public's favoring them, minus 190. We look at these odds here as well. 66% chance to advance. It's just kind of an easy one. I shouldn't say easy one, but just kind of one I feel like we need to make. And then from there, we look at Kansas State versus Montana State. Minus 140 for Kansas State to advance. 94% of the field is picking them as well, which is pretty crazy. Now, I kind of mentioned how some refereeing crews could really dictate games. Montana State is a game that gets to the free throw line. I believe it was like the third most. Chances are it's not going to happen this game. So it does seem like most likely Kansas State is going to blow them out. Once again, just looking at the odds here, 85% chance for them to win. And so if we look at it, this is very interesting to me. Kentucky and Kansas State. Let's go ahead and examine that matchup. So looking at 63% of the field is picking Kansas State to advance. 63. Look at the odds here. We can see Kentucky actually has a 10% more likelihood to advance. Now let's see if that holds up when we're looking at the Sweet 16 odds. Kansas State at plus 145, Kentucky at plus 155. So not a big difference there. And so the fact that 64% of the field is on Kansas State, I think we can gain an edge there simply by going Kentucky. This is basically a 50-50 decision, but 64% of the field is saying no, it's not. That's an edge we can gain there. And that's going to be true as well for ESPN as well. Kentucky is not favored over Kansas State. So that's a big edge. And then Marquette we're just selecting. And then looking at Michigan State versus USC, 7 and 10 matchup. So Sparty is projected to win minus 135. 59% of the field's picking them. That seems right. That actually seems a little bit too low given those odds. And so if we look at it here as well, 64% chance for them to advance. I think we just eat the chalk there. If they don't win, oh well, we're not losing much because we know we're going to be picking Marquette to beat them as well. So from there, we kind of established that we're going Marquette versus Kentucky. Now, Marquette's going to be the team to beat here. It makes sense. But looking at it, guys, they have one of the lowest likelihoods of 2 seeds to really advance to the Final Four or Elite Eight. If you want to get unique there, you can. I'm from Wisconsin, a little bit of a homer here. I'm picking them to win. It's kind of as simple as that. Now, they've won 6 games, 7-2 versus top 25 teams. Like, they play great against great opponents. So I think it's just kind of one we need to roll with. And just looking at it, like Marquette's likelihood to advance to the Elite Eight is plus 200, whereas Kentucky or even Kansas State is double that, almost. So to me, it makes more logical sense to go with Marquette there. And then Purdue versus Tennessee, you know, we did gain an edge by going Tennessee there, it seems like, but at the same time, 10 losses. Okay, Purdue has 5 less losses. We look at Purdue's odds to advance, they're much better than Tennessee's, and Purdue has the 3rd best odds to advance to the Sweet 16 or to the Elite Eight. So we're just going to go with them. So then we have a 1-2 matchup. This Yahoo bracket is going to be my much more data focused bracket. I said I'm a homer. In my ESPN bracket, that's going to be more fun. I'm going with Marquette, but here for this video purposes, I'm going to go Purdue. And now that leaves us with the West bracket. Once again, we're just going with the number 1 seed in Kansas. Then from there, we have Arkansas versus Illinois. Arkansas is favored to win minus 135. So they already have the odds in their favor, yet not 50% of the field is picking them on Yahoo brackets. Now that's going to be a little bit different on ESPN brackets. So, you know, probably just going with Arkansas either way there. And once again, if we just look at who's favored to win, Arkansas 52%. So probably just going with them there. But all in all, we're going to go Kansas next, so it doesn't really matter. Then looking at St. Mary's versus VCU, St. Mary's heavily favored to win. We look at their odds to win 59% as well. So I think we are just rolling with St. Mary's there as well. So moving on, we got UConn versus Iona, one of the most heavily favored teams to advance in round 1. -1 or -450. That is insane. Favored to win by 9.5 points. They've won 9 of their last 11 games as well. And if we look at it, they have an 85% chance to win this. And then also we're probably just going to be picking them to win the next round as well, just given those odds. Then from there, we don't exactly know which team is going to play. If they look good, we can adjust here. Okay, like that's fine. For now, we're going TCU like everyone else. Then from there, Gonzaga, just like an easy play as well. Look at this. I mean, that is crazy, right? Yeah, we're just going Gonzaga there. And then here's where we could actually gain some edge on the field as well. Boise State, you know, this is kind of just a push. Although right now, 41% of the field is on Boise State. That's going to be true on ESPN as well. Now, if we pull it up, like on paper, these two teams are basically the same. Boise State has 2 less losses as well. I know the Big Ten was a tough conference this year, but still kind of eye-popping there. And if we look at here, 538 actually has them favored to win. So that's kind of good enough for me. The fact that we're getting props that suggests it should be a push, to me, like it should be 50-50. Let's just go with the team that's lower owned. Maybe we can gain a point on the field. And then looking at UCLA, heavy favorite to win, I'm just going to be going with them. And then we're also going to pick UCLA to advance from Boise State. Gonzaga, we saw heavily favored to win that matchup as well against TCU. I mean, 64% chance for them to advance. Really, the biggest difference in the bracket is going to be this game, it seems like, between UCLA and Gonzaga. And just given the fact that in the bracket, we're already going with 3 number 1 seeds, it kind of seems like we have to go with Gonzaga or UCLA to make it to the Final Four. And so looking at like Kansas, we already know we're going to pick UConn heavily favored to win. St. Mary's not a bad team, but if we look at their odds as well, UConn heavily favored to get over there compared to St. Mary's. And if we want to look at that here on the Sweet 16 odds as well, we can see very strong odds for UConn to get to the Sweet 16. So it just makes sense to go with them. Yes, they're heavily favored there, but it just makes sense. So maybe we could get unique here and maybe pick UConn over Kansas because this spread isn't that different. 39% and 31% for UConn. And if we look at the difference here, 79% of brackets are going with Kansas. We already kind of established that this is going to be the bracket that really seems to be make or break. It could be UConn advancing, it could be Gonzaga advancing, it could be UCLA advancing. I like UCLA. I'm probably going to pick them. That's kind of my personal thing, to be honest with you guys. But looking at it, like, let's just look at to get the Elite Eight. UCLA plus 170, Gonzaga plus 185, then Kansas plus 190. That's because they have a tougher matchup with UConn. And so that is why I think we want to go with UCLA or Gonzaga. And UCLA is actually the betting favorite to advance out of that bracket. So I think we are just going with UCLA. We can get a little bit unique like that. And then from there, it's picking who do we want to win from there. We already saw Alabama as strong likelihood to advance. And then we could just maybe gain an edge on the field. Hopefully our bracket is strong enough by going with the second most likely team to make it to the finals. And that's going to be Houston. Now, the biggest question mark with Houston and UCLA is their injury concerns. I think they're good to go. I think we can pick Houston to win. Now, in my slate homer bracket, I did go Marquette versus UCLA, trying to get unique in that as well. It's not out of the question, right? UCLA is a very good team. Once again, they have the highest likelihood in their region to make it to the finals as well. So it does seem like the logical approach to go UCLA there. But that is it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the March Madness bracket breakdown. I had fun covering it. Hopefully you guys did as well. Hopefully you guys are able to make a profitable, fun bracket. I know it's a little bit different. Some brackets go off of points. Some brackets just go off of points. You can make your decisions based off of that as well. And I think we gave a couple of really fun upset bets as well. All right. Thanks for watching. And as always, let's keep cashing.